You know, these intermissions are supposed to be lighter-hearted affairs to kind of back off of the heavy topics and whatnot. And this one has lighter-hearted parts of it, but it also has some serious parts because they're kind of intertwined, as you'll see. I met Jimmy and Greg at a party. I think I was, I don't know, maybe 17, 19, somewhere in there. Greg he's a regular guy, 5'6", healthy guy, neatly trimmed beard, well-spoken, regular guy, nice guy. They both showed up together at this party. We were out on the back deck, and then Jimmy ambles in. He couldn't walk properly. He had a cane, and he kind of shuffled along, kind of crippled over. He had the old hippie leather headband and the John Lennon spectacle glasses and his shaggy beard, you know, and hey, nice to meet you, and then chain smoked and all that good stuff. And I found out as we went along that both of them were Vietnam vets. We'll get back to that in just a bit. Jimmy had a guitar with him. Wasn't even a case. He just was carrying it as he shuffled along, ambled down and sat down, and he started picking around a little bit, and he played the old Buffalo Springfield song, For What It's Worth, and sang it in a warbling, scratchy voice. Yeah, it was serviceable. A little rough, you know, but it did get my attention. That's how I met him. We were talking and carrying on. I cannot for the life of me remember how it was that we got like a more personal connection than just, hey, nice to meet you, you know, random guys at a party. But it did. Not so much Greg, but Jimmy. In Vietnam, Jimmy was what they called a tunnel rat. The Vietnamese people had an elaborate series of tunnels so they could move themselves and munitions and whatnot underground. So smaller guys, as Jimmy was, he was pretty frail, pretty narrow in the shoulders, and, you know, even, I'm sure when he was young, he was just a smaller guy. And guys like that, they recruited and turned them into tunnel rats. And these guys worked their way through these tunnels, trying to find the enemy, trying to find supplies, you know, mapping out these tunnels. And Jimmy had the misfortune of being one of these tunnel rats. And sometimes, you know, they were full rooms underground, just earthen walls. This is the Vietnamese people. They were a poor country. But they'd have maps and whatnot pinned up against the walls and limited power down there, you know, for lighting. And then sometimes they were just literally narrow tunnels that you had to shimmy through. And you're talking about big time snakes, roaches, all the bugs that you would find underground. The biggest problem being the snakes and the rats, because after the tunnels were dug, the rats would infest, and, you know. So you're in there with them in the dark, because there was rules to being a tunnel rat. You didn't turn on your light until you actually knew the enemy was present. So you're in the dark, shimmying, sometimes on your back, just scooting tight. And they told them to bang on the sides of the tunnels, because the Vietnamese would intersect tunnels and they'd put little false fronts over them, you know, sheet of wood or whatever. And so the American soldiers would pass, getting through this tiny tunnel in the dark. And once they knew they'd passed, they'd pop the hatch, you know, and not a good thing. That's what happened to Jimmy. And he said, I must have checked one side and passed right over the other one where the trap door was, and just missed it. Just freak luck. He was on his back. It was tight in the dark. And he said he did not realize that the enemy was in the tunnel until he felt his breath. Hand to hand now, in tight confines, in a battle for life. This Vietnamese soldier at one point got kicked off and was able to get his pistol, and he shot up Jimmy, shot him up in the inner thighs, in the crotch area, and I think shot him, I want to say 5 times. Jimmy was able to somehow survive. He took out the enemy soldier. Then they couldn't get him out of the tunnel, and they actually sent another tunnel rat, small man, in there. He couldn't get him out, so they hooked up a rope and drug him on his back as he's wounded with 5 bullets in him, drug him out of this tunnel. That was the end of his service, you know, totally disabled. He lived on disability after that. Jimmy's, one of his many problems, they took his driver's license from him because after all the surgeries and all the corrective, you know, he got shot 5 times in the inner thigh and in the groin. And so walking was a trick. He spent 2 years trying to relearn how to walk after all these surgeries and whatnot. And initially he could drive, and something happened at an intersection and he couldn't get his foot over quick enough to the brake pedal to stop. Another big accident, more surgeries and all that. And they took his driver's license from him. You're not allowed to drive anymore. So he's totally dependent on others as far as transportation. That's kind of where I came in. Because a grown man, as a Vietnam vet, doesn't generally hang out much with whatever I was. We'll say 18. It's a good compromise between 17 and 19. A grown man doesn't generally hang out with someone that age unless they have a vehicle. So a couple things about Jimmy. He was totally dependent on a ride. That's where I come in. And he was incredibly lonely because he's in their house. Jimmy and Greg were roommates. He didn't have anybody to talk to. His whole existence was numbing the pain of Vietnam, and he never got out of that. Alcohol, marijuana, the pharmaceutical drugs that they prescribed to him to deal with his pain. I mean, from the time he woke up, he said he smoked joint, and that's how the day started. So you can imagine, you know, and he just clinked on his guitar. This is pre-internet, and you know, there wasn't a whole lot going on. You got cable TV all day and hoping somebody could come by and give you a ride to the store to get more liquor. Interestingly, I found out later that Greg served I don't think it was the same unit, but they enlisted together. They were lifetime friends, high school buddies. He went through everything Jimmy went through minus the tunnels, but he saw things that no human should have to see. He had the same damage. He was a productive citizen. He went out and worked every day. He'd have, you know, a beer or 3 every now and again, but he didn't use drugs. He was living his life as a middle-aged man. At one point, he wanted to go to the bar, and there used to be a really nice restaurant not too far from where I lived at, and they had a bar within it. Very nice place, like the kind of place you might maybe take a first date type thing if you're into going to a bar or a club. Music, but not where you had to scream at each other to be heard. Incredibly ornate woodwork. It's just a really nice place. You could get a nice dinner and you could have a drink at the bar if you wanted. He was a regular there, and he recruits me to get him there. And he's, yeah, come to the bar with me. You know, I'll pay for your gas. I'll buy your drinks. I got plenty of money. I just ain't got a ride. And I'm like, dude, I'm 18. They're not going to let me into the bar. They know me. You just tell them we'll just have a story, you know, and that we're old friends. How old can you be? I'm 18, you know, that I'm a regular. Well, he spent enough money there. They knew coming in the door. You're not 18. He's with me. He's 21. Just turned 21 a couple months ago, wasn't it? Yeah. Total BS. They knew. They put up with it because he was a regular and a valuable customer. So we start drinking. Mind you, I got an open tab. Jimmy's paying for the works. And we sat there, I don't know, a couple hours. And I mean, I am just shellacked. I mean, just gone. And I decide I gotta go pee. It's like, the bathroom's so far away. I can do this. I stagger my way to the restroom in this, you know, next to the bar in this establishment. I'm kind of fuzzy on the memories here. I do remember using the restroom, and all I could think was like, man, I gotta get home. I'm ready for bed. I mean, this has gone way further. And so I left the restroom. I got in my vehicle, and I drove stupidly under the influence. I mean, hammered. But I drove the 3 miles or whatever it was to my house and flopped in on the couch. And that was it. You know, I'm out. I think it's probably 2 hours or so go by, and I kind of roll over on the couch, you know, just out of it. And I was just like, what is it? Something I'm forgetting. what is the deal? And I had a glass of water, you know. I was like, man, oh, Jimmy's still at the bar. I grab my wallet, I jump back in the truck, I go down. He's in the exact same place, telling war stories from Vietnam to the same people. I don't know, he's been drinking this whole time. So I sat right beside him like I was. He's like, you okay? I was like, yeah, there's a line in the bathroom. Man, you're gone a little while. 2 hours, enough to take a nap at home. And I just totally forgot. I just say, no, I started drinking again, and we spent the rest of till they closed the place down, you know. That's the humorous part. The sad part is that was Jimmy's life. The trouble with that is he never got out of Vietnam. Vietnam was the end for him. He was stuck there mentally. He may as well have been there physically because he never got out of it. Any of the songs that he played on guitar were always about Vietnam or about somebody he went to Vietnam with or somebody that was killed in Vietnam. They're always depressing, you know, and sounded a lot alike, same chords and stuff. And this was about old Cisco, and he was running down the hill. I was like, Cisco, my buddy, and do you know me? And Cisco hit a landmine and blew him into a billion pieces. So I wrote a song about it. It's like, well, that'll help you, you know. And I'm not down on the guy. That is a traumatic experience for anyone. But he never got out of Vietnam. His life stopped there. He was just stuck in that mindset. Drugs, alcohol, the pharmaceuticals, none of that stuff was going to help. It was just numbing the pain. And many soldiers like Jimmy that were in Vietnam, or really any of the major conflicts, never got the help that they so desperately needed. Man, I despise what has become of the rah-rah part of the military thing, because I don't think we should be invading sovereign countries. But for the vets that did have to serve, and Jimmy was drafted, he did not volunteer. He was forced by his government, as was Greg, through the draft, to go and fight in Vietnam for, we're going to contain communism, for no real reason, and watch your friends die and be maimed for life and have all these psychological problems and then come home and there's no help. There was counseling at the VA. This is like 1970, you know, when he got back. It was a joke. You know, well, they fought in World War II. Nobody had any problems, except they did. They just shut down. A bad deal, man. I don't know whatever became of Jimmy. We didn't hang out long or anything. You know, I quickly realized that he mostly just needs a ride and somebody to unleash on, you know, try to unpack some of the stuff. I was not 18. I wasn't that guy. You know, I help you out and give you a ride and stuff, but I don't know what became of him or Greg. It just was fascinating to me that Greg went through the same kind of trauma and was able to overcome it and live a productive life. Jimmy was not. You're welcome to put comments or, you know, if you knew anybody that... I'm interested. I'm interested in what you have to say. I thank you for watching. I do appreciate your time. We'll see you next time. You know, in telling these old stories, seems to be like a repeating pattern, always with alcohol and, you know, sometimes drugs. It's almost like a trend. It's weird.